The winter has finally caught up to this truck. After being used as a plow truck for a while, things are starting to rot out. The rot has gotten to the point where it's too sketchy to keep on driving. My main concern is the two cab mounts. Both sides are almost completely gone. There's only a tiny piece of metal keeping my cab from nosediving right into the frame, which I'd like to avoid. So I've got two options. I can either buy a cab off of Facebook Marketplace and swap it on, or buy all the tools and materials to fix my existing cab. I personally prefer to save things if possible, and I also want to learn rust repair, since there's a lot more to go around in this truck. I'm gonna roll the dice and see if I can repair this cab by myself. There's three things that need to be removed before the cab can come off, which is the 4 body bolts that attach the cab to the frame, the front clip meaning the hood, fenders, and grille, and lastly anything that's attached to the firewall, such as the master cylinder and the heater core hoses. I'm going to start by uncovering the 4 bolts that are buried underneath my interior. Don't worry about the missing steering wheel, it's sitting in the corner of my room. Starting with the seats first, there's 4 bolts that hold in the whole assembly. I ended up just unbolting each seat individually just to make it lighter for me to carry. I have taken it out as a whole assembly before, but it's a 2-man job for the most part. Now let's move on to the trim. I needed to take out this top bolt for the seatbelt to fully remove this back pillar. After that, I removed the sill plate along with the kick panel, and I also repeated this on the other side. Everything was held in with screws and clips, which all came out pretty easily, except for the 4x4 trim. That didn't want to come out. All the screws were in recessed holes and the heads have become quite rusty. So and that was the last piece of trim. Now I'm left with just the carpet and the actual 4x4 shifter that's pretty rusty and I couldn't get it out, so I'm gonna deal with it later. I'll just pull the carpet over it for now. The carpet being wet didn't help much.
That's soaked.
With the carpet out, I now have access to all the bolts, which is a huge step in the right direction. These are the 2 back ones, which are in pretty good condition, and the front ones are down below in their own little box. Now we're not done emptying the cab yet. Like I said, I need this cab to be as light as possible. Now I don't have a 4-post lift, but I did just purchase a 2-ton engine hoist from Harbor Freight that I plan to use to lift the cab off the frame. So the lighter the cab is, the better. The only other thing in the cab is the dash, which shouldn't be too bad to take out. It's just a few wires. That was nothing important, I think. After unplugging a ton of connectors on the passenger side and removing my steering column, the dash was ready to go. And now the cab is basically empty, other than the HVAC system, which is just going to stay for the ride. Time to turn our attention to the front clip. We're going to start out with the easy stuff first. The grille was held in with 5 screws, 4 up on top, and then 1 screw hidden below the Ford emblem. And the headlight bezels were held in with 2 screws up on top and 2 nuts on the back. Unfortunately, that's the end of the easy part. Next is the hood, which I've been dreading for a while. It's pretty awkward to remove a hood by yourself, and this one's quite large. So I had to get creative. I went to Home Depot and picked up some 2x4s and spent a snowy afternoon building a cart. This was my first woodworking project, and the goal of the cart is to catch my hood as it comes down, and then it could double as an engine cover if I tarp it for when it snows or rains. I even added wheels on the bottom so I could roll this thing back and forth. Now, did I mention this is my first ever woodworking project? My lack of skill led me to build a very unstable cart that's on the verge of breaking already, but it'll have to do. I got no one else to help me pull his hood. After about an hour, I was able to unbolt the hood and set it down in the cart. And it went pretty smoothly with all things considered. I was then able to wheel the hood off. Sort of. Now onto the fenders, which are way easier to remove. They're held in with a handful of bolts, some of them being in some tight spots, but I'm not complaining. I'd much rather be dealing with this than that damn 4x4 shifter. All the bolts came out surprisingly easy. Even this back bolt, which is notorious for breaking the clip and getting stuck in there. After a little bit of wiggling, the fender was off. Both fenders were then moved into storage. I did forget to get footage of me removing the other fender. But, just like that, the front clip is gone. Now time for the firewall. There's a few miscellaneous things that need to be removed, like the heater hoses. Normally these things are pretty stuck on there and you end up just cutting them. I didn't need to do that. I just used a pair of pliers. I got the clamps off and then I was able to twist the lines back and forth. And they just pulled right off. After that, I removed the huge nut on the receiver dryer, which was 1.25 inches, which is pretty big. I also took out the windshield reservoir, and luckily there wasn't that much fluid in it. Don't drink that. Now on to the driver's side. The master cylinder is the only thing in the way over here. The studs were pretty ugly, but with the help of a breaker bar, I was able to get the nuts to start moving. The reason that I'm not taking the booster and master cylinder off is because I don't want to open the braking system. I've never done anything with brakes and I don't want to start now. So with the nuts off, it should come right out. Keyword, should. After 30 years, it seems like the master has rusted to the studs. Which makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is how strong that bond was. After beating and prying on this thing for 30 minutes, I decided I'll just unbolt the booster and then I'll bungee cord both of them out of the way.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that didn't work either. The airbox needed to be removed. And at that point, I decided I'll just drain the master and remove the rusty lines. This actually worked better than expected. With some freeze off, I was able to get both the nuts to start spinning.
Did I just... I guess it was not coming out. Well, now I definitely need to do brakes.
To be fair, it was spinning, till it wasn't. Now let's inspect the brake booster.
Ta-da.
As you can see, I've taken a few swings at this thing in an attempt to get the master off, and my god, they are literally fused together. I was able to get a little bit of separation on one of the ears, but I'm kind of on the border here. I don't know if I should just get a new master because it's probably close to 30 years old, or if I should just get this one off and reuse it. I didn't originally have any problems with this master, so I don't know, but let me know what you guys think. The booster, on the other hand, is getting replaced. It's severely dented and it's also quite rusty. With that being said, it's finally time to move on to the 4 body bolts. Starting with the passenger side rear bolt, I used a breaker bar up top to stop the bolt head from spinning. And then I went underneath. I did try to clean the bolt threads a little bit with a nylon wire wheel, but I couldn't really get it in there. There wasn't too much room to work. After I got the nut to break free, I did tighten and loosen the bolt a few times just to get some of the rust out of the threads. I was kind of shocked that Ford didn't use any Loctite on these bolts, but it worked in my favor because I didn't have to use any heat for these. I repeated this on the driver's side, but this time I was not able to get a socket on the bottom nut. That was because the fuel tank was blocking it. So I ended up switching to a wrench and I wedged it against the frame and it worked alright.
Son of a bitch. No, it just broke. But that's okay. okay. At least I got it out.
Moving to the driver front bolt, I switched to a ratchet on the bottom to stop the nut from spinning, and that worked pretty good. The only problem was that it just kept on falling a lot.
Can you guys just hold the ratchet? Holy shit. One job.
And I learned from my last mistake. I did get some of the rust out of the threads before I tried to fully take it out. Once again, it was the same thing on the passenger side. The only difference is I had to smack a socket onto the head. With all 4 bolts out, this cab is finally ready to be lifted. That's going to happen in the next episode though, so I'll see you guys there.